Welcome back, everyone. This is Dynamic Character Productions recaps of our season 4 mini Survivor Sahara Dunes. I have two new guests with me today. First is our production member and brother of the episode 4 wheeled out contestant, Jon. Jon, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Alex. I'm looking forward to talking about this cast. They're a very fun cast, even if I don't quite agree with some of their strategic decisions this week.
Oh yeah, I expect nothing less from you, Jon. And with us today, our guest is an alumni from our season 2 mini of Lalumanu Beach. Was our 5th place finisher, Kyle. Kyle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I got my Fusiaga buff on, representing, ready to talk about these two episodes. A lot of interesting stuff going on.
Absolutely. I love the dedication with the buff. But we're talking about two new tribes here. We're talking about Maziwa and we're talking about Damu. And we're going to jump right into it with episode 3. Let's effing yeet this guy. Uh, love the title. Comes from Jon. Very energetic dude. So we go in here and we are told pretty much immediately the tribes need to be split and you need to have 3 representatives to go on a quest. We'll start with Damu, who doesn't understand what's actually happening, and they're just like, "Oh, this sounds like fun," and that's how they make their decision. Is the 3 people who thought it'd be the most fun, which is Victoria, Sean, and Jordyn. Uh, Honestly, this gave me a very good laugh because it was just them be like, "Oh, I just want to have a fun time. Let's take the opportunity." And you have like Erik and Landon, who've already been like had to represent multiple times, don't really know what's going on, so they're just like, I'm not saying anything. I'm just gonna lay back, let do it. What did you guys think about their decision making here? We'll start with you, Kyle.
Well, I don't blame Erik and Landon for not stepping up because they have been in that role a couple times before, but I do think both of them would have really benefited from having split apart here because when they both stay on the same tribe, that is such a huge target. So again, don't blame them for not doing it, but I think it's just one of those things where had they split up, I think things could have gone differently.
Yeah, Jon, what do you think?
Some behind the scenes production thought process here is this is exactly what we wanted the players to respond to when we got to the swap. We had the Africa theme, so we thought, oh, those who are really entrenched in Survivor are going to realize what's happening here. But with having the challenge that we had in episode 2, where they had to select 2 people to represent the tribe and make decisions for the tribe, we were really hoping it would kind of throw them off the scent. And it really succeeded for the Damu tribe, who didn't seem to have an inkling that there was a swap coming here.
No, not at all. And part of that is you have a lot of people who aren't as seasoned when it comes to like just Survivor knowledge, just knowing right off the bat of, oh, they're doing this. They had the T-Bird reference. Oh, they must be doing the swap. Not the same case on Damu. Damu is they all pretty much figured out immediately, oh, this is what it's a swap. Why else would they be asking for half the tribe to be represented? But we see Jon just like be the first one who's like, hey, I'll do it. And we know it's because ultimately Jon's bored and he wants to see the game open up and see people actually go into breakout rooms, which from a production aspect, we love to hear that because even if it's not in their best interest to do it, it's more entertaining, and that's what we're looking for. We want to see people moving around, jumping around. And then with that, we have we get Kylie and Danny also volunteering to go, which is music to Robbie's ears because the 2 girls that he connected with the most and wanted to work with in this game are Alanis and Maddie. So we get the new tribes now. New Damu is Michael, Erik, Landon with newbies Jon, Kylie, and Danny. And then new Maziwa is Maddie, Robbie, and Alanis with new faces of Sean, Jordyn, Victoria. I like this. I love doing this swap here and that we were fortunate enough to have it where it was an even split. So it worked out basically perfect for us because that was something I think we did have a slight concern about. Jon was like, if one tribe lost 2 people, but we still kept that way, we could have saw something similar to what we were seeing on Air Ricky Island, where it just will have been that depleted tribe just going again and again until we hit the merge.
Yeah, the even numbers really help and really kind of made it interesting from a strategic standpoint for these two episodes, especially when we see how especially because we get to see how each of the tribes handles the situation differently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Which leads us to our challenge, and that's memory duel. Uh, 1v1 from each tribe. They go into a breakout room where there are 4 die laid out. You have to memorize the order of those die, and then come back to the main room, roll 4 individual die until you have all the right numbers, put them in the right order, get a check. If you're right, you get a point. First tribe to 4 points win. And it couldn't have turned out any better for, I think, from a TV aspect of it all coming down to the last round, whether it be tied up and you would have to do a tiebreaker round, or would the Maziwa tribe win immunity, or the new Maziwa tribe. So we essentially get a good split. First, Sean and Robbie win for Maziwa, then Erik wins to bring Damu up on the board, then Victoria wins to put a 3-1 advantage for new Maziwa. But then Michael wins to make it 3-2. So it all comes down to the most important round, and it's Alanis versus Landon. And you know what? I could explain it, but John, you were there. John, give us a good breakdown over what went down in that breakout room.
Yeah, I was there. I have the camera set up for the vertical look down. So I'm the one who sets up the dice, and I don't know what's happening on the other side of the challenge. I sit in the breakout room by myself, just wait for people to show up, figure out if I need to change the sequence or not. And we get in there, and the first thing that happens is Landon just saying, Alanis, I don't have the dice. Like, I can't do it. You have to go take as long as you need to look at these, memorize them, go back. I just have to make it look like I'm really struggling because I can't show that I don't have these dice. I was shocked, absolutely shocked, mainly because I don't know how Landon kind of thought hanging around in the breakout room was going to help his case here, because per the rules of the challenge, as soon as one person leaves, I close the shutter on my camera and they can no longer look at the dice.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting there. And Kyle, you've worked these rounds before. You played in a mini format. We see that Landon, and we hear some people say oh, Landon was trying to claim that he was having difficulties leaving the breakout room. Then it leads to some other aspects of people well, did he get an advantage while he was in there or whatnot? What are your thoughts there? If you were on his tribe and you're seeing him take forever to come back, you don't really understand why it is that he's having difficulties, because besides that, there's no other Zoom issues that he's been having these rounds. What your headspace would be?
Oh man, definitely one of the many humorous Landon moments from this episode. I thought it was funny just the fact that he lost the die right off the bat, because they're not too far into the game, so it's not like you can be misplacing your supplies so early. I thought that was interesting, but really there's no good way out of this for him, because he either admits that he lost one of his materials, which isn't great, or he's having technical difficulties. Maybe he claims that he left the whole call. And that's not good either. You don't want somebody on your tribe, as I know, having technical difficulties in a challenge, because that can totally screw up everything going forward. So, I get his logic of how he tried to get out of it, but really there was no great excuse for what happened.
I agree. He was in a very difficult spot in this challenge that it got to that point. Obviously, he got himself placed last in the hopes that it wouldn't ever get to him. But it is what it is. So it's either you leave the call, you actually physically leave the call and use that as an excuse, or you go in and say, oh, I don't have materials, which we talked about in the first recap. He didn't have a lot of the stuff that we would need. And I think that is the worst move that you could do, just because then that's going to be an immediate, the scramble round's going to be boring. It's going to be 5v1 because everyone's going to be we need to win. We can't win if someone doesn't have materials. We don't know what other challenges are going to be happening as a tribe. So it'd be a 5-1 vote by Landon. See you later. But we can get into that now because Maziwa wins immunity. New Damu is going to tribal council. John, I do just want to make a brief comment on the Maddie explaining the swap and her calling it Africa Survivor popped me.
Yeah, I know. She isn't as versed with Survivor as we on production or some of our more super fans who play the game are. She definitely reversed that nomenclature there, and it was a little awkward.
It was very funny on my end. Like, it was like, because I knew that. So it was sort of harmless fun to have there. But it's a lot of people sort of feeling it out. They're not quite sure how to think about this new tribe layout. Victoria didn't expect it. She's a new watcher of Survivor as well. And so, but she does make reference. I do like that there's a majority of girls on this group, and we'll see that come into play in episode 4. But I think for the most part, that's like the main things that we see that are important there. But we're starting to see the thing of more likely than not a 3-3 coming in episode 4, which we do see happen. But we're going to focus on Damu here. And really, we start out the 3 people from old Maziwa and the 3 original people from Damu in 2 different rooms, both saying the same thing. We don't want to go to rocks. We need to find someone who would flip. Who do you think will flip? So ultimately, we see that Landon and Erik and Michael have the name of Jon originally. It was a toss-up between Jon and Kylie, but it looks like Dennie, for the most part, is a very central figure in this round. It looks like outside of Michael, who they just never talked, everyone else seems they want Dennie working with them in one way or another. So, like, Jon, tell me how you were seeing like Dennie's placement here.
I think Dennie was very charismatic while playing, and that plays a big role in these minis where everyone kind of has to go off of first impressions. So when you have 2 strong men in Landon and Erik who have already connected, they want to find someone who they think they can pull over, who thinks similarly to them. And I think Dennie just kind of exuded the same mentality that the 2 of them had towards the game. So it made sense for them to be targeting Dennie from their perspective, despite the fact that someone like Jon might have been a better target because he was more willing to go out there with more game moves.
But at the same time, you had Jon that in confessional saying, because he was the first one to actually have a conversation with Landon and Erik. And he was like, if they would have just came in and told me a name, I would have went for it. Because I'm here to play the game. I would have done something to shake things up. And what better way to avoid rocks and make sure it's not my name going out there. But they didn't do that. So now I'm going to do it. And we see him and Kylie go to work on Michael. And Kyle, I think we can once again go back to you here. You had experience with essentially going to rocks. In Lalumanu Beach, at the merge, we have that vote where it's 5 votes on Dylan, 5 votes on Morgan, and that vote in particular went tribe lines. But I wasn't in those breakout rooms. Like, when you were in there, was there anyone pitching to you saying like, "Hey, is there any way we could bring you in? If we could bring you in, who would you want gone from your group? We could try to get someone from our group next." Like, what was going on through your perspective?
Well, it really, watching this, it did really remind me of that round, because nobody wants to go to rocks, but also nobody's willing to throw out like the name. You don't really want to tell the name to the opposite alliance in case they have an idol, but you also don't accomplish anything if you don't throw out a name. So it's definitely a whole lot of like, hey, we don't want to go to rocks. Hey, if you throw your vote out, just waste your vote. We'll keep you safe next time. Which means you'll be in the minority, So nobody's comfortable enough to throw out a name, but you also do risk going to rocks by not doing that.
And I think these 2 episodes in particular really highlight the good and bad of doing it, of like being the person to flip or being the person who's adamant, like, I understand I'm risking my own game, but I think statistically this is what I need to do in order to hopefully come out ahead of it. And like, Jon, from your perspective, I know you have a clear thought process on what the decision that needs to be made. If you're in the position where you feel I can flip, but by flipping, I know I'm putting myself in the bottom of that new majority, or they could be just using me and throwing me out the next time we go to tribal, what would you be thinking?
I think in this instance where you have another tribe that has even numbers with yours, you have to be thinking, if I flip, it incentivizes the other tribe not to vote out one of the original members of our tribe. I think there's a lot of strategic layers to it, but in the end, I think going to Rocks, if you aren't getting the votes, going to Rocks is one of the dumbest decisions you can make in Survivor. And even if you are getting the votes, it's also dumb to go to Rocks, because then you just might not go to Rocks. So Survivor is just about making it to the next round. If you can position yourself in a way where you make it to the next round, you can still be okay. And in this instance, where you're flipping on potentially two people who you're already working with, you're giving yourself that buffer zone as well to not be the next person to go. And with only 12 people left in the game, you have to assume a merge is coming soon. And then at that point, it's a brand new game.
Absolutely. And so it's very tricky, especially in a mini format, because people would think a longer game would cause actually more people to want to just keep towing the line. But I think you do find that risk in a mini as well, just because you're moving at such a fast pace. And Kyle, you had your alliance that you were working with. You guys voted for each other a couple times when you felt like there was no options, but for the most part, you, Serena, Anthony, you guys were lockstep with each other up until you guys eventually, or until you got voted out of the game, or idled out of the game. But regardless of that, it's just I will say in DCP just history, when you look back on it, when you get to a merge and there's a minority, the minority isn't the people going out originally. No. The first in both our games so far where there's been a divide and not an even split going into a merge, the majority original tribe loses the first three members at the merge at both times. It's a very interesting stat there, but what it's telling you is you can take the risk, like John's saying, of being the person who flips. We see Michael flips here to take out Landon. And which ultimately it's because they're annoyed by Landon and they're sort of sketched out by him at the same time, because he keeps claiming to play hard. I would argue he wasn't playing hard. He was playing messy. And there's actually a difference there, everyone. But you can make that risk knowing that you have a scramble round where you can just go hard if you need to go hard and recover. And if not, you lose a game. That's the ultimate thing, is you're not losing high stakes things here, and you want to have fun. So be a John who's saying he wants to yeet people out of the Zoom call. So ultimately that's what we do see. John and Kylie did the work on Michael goes in confessional, and it's always finding the right person to flip, I think, is always key. When you try to hound the wrong person who's just going to be a loyal number, or the person who's at the head of the other side, why would I turn when I have these numbers to back me up? Michael wasn't in that position. Michael had his name thrown out in the first round. He genuinely likes his conversations he's having with the other tribe. It makes all the sense in the world for him to go. But we see Landon here also with his messiness go, well, just so you guys know, I don't want to break trust or anything, but I have a steal a vote that I can only use in the pre-merge, so I'm going to use it here. Oh, wait, it's an extra vote. Either way, I'm using it. And I'm just he's sort of lucky that a lot of these people aren't the biggest Survivor fans. Some are, they've watched the show, but if I'm in there, I would take that slip up not as oh, he just made a mistake with what it was. I'd be oh, he's lying. I'm going to vote his ass out. And that's what we see happens. Him and Erik get blindsided. Landon goes out 4-2. Hey, he was in there for 4 hours. He wanted to try to shake things up, but it ended up biting him. He's our third boo to Sahara Dunes. Kyle, do you have any final thoughts on Landon and his game?
Well, I mean, we got to talk about this extra vote situation here, because I was just laughing so hard at this. I appreciate the effort, right? I kind of like the lie, but if you're going to do it, I think it makes way more sense to do it at the beginning of the scramble round, because then you start to get the other side paranoid. They throw each other's names out. He did it right before they went, so it looks super desperate. He says that he got it randomly. He could only use it pre-merge. None of it added. It's that doesn't make any sense, man. So I think everybody else made the right move. And he even sketched out his closest ally, Erik. He sketched him out to the point where he thought he was going home at that tribal council. it just didn't work on any level. But it was very funny, I have to say.
Yeah, John, what do you think?
I mean, to Kyle's point, saying it at the end of the round makes absolutely no sense, because at that point, you've already allowed the other side of the tribe to gather the numbers that an extra vote no longer matters. They still have the numbers 4-3, even if you do have an extra vote there. So saying it at the beginning of the round, like Kyle said, gives off that paranoia. It might incentivize people to come to you because they're like, oh no, well, this is here, or this is going to happen anyway, so I might as well flip. But it also puts that risk. It's this risk reward, which is the beautiful thing about Survivor, is when you have these moves to make, is it worth it to make the move, or is it worth it to hold tight? And in this case, Landon takes this very big risk of saying, hey, I have this thing. And so everyone was just like, okay, well, good thing we're voting for you anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right. And it's also possible that the issue is sort of like what Kyle said. Landon was one of the first people to actually like say a name. It was a fake name, but it was a name, and it was Michael. And Michael already knew that someone, and he was putting it on Landon, put his name out for, because obviously Sherry voted for him. So someone had to tell her it was Michael. So I think ultimately, Michael made a smart move there, making that move. It keeps him out where, at most there's only one or two more immunities before, or challenges that as tribes before we would be merging. And it's not him. So it's an interesting episode. Landon, I think, would be interesting to see play again if he actually got all the materials, and so wasn't having to constantly be only freaking out about how do I hide that I don't have stuff, and be able to spend more of that mental capacity on just the game and building the relationships. I think we could have saw a different outcome, but it is interesting that it's the third person now out of the first three booths that have org experience in one way or another going out, and a lot of these newbies just taking the reins for this game, which leads us to episode 4. Maybe I jumped ship, quote by Sean. So yeah, we hear, like Kyle said, Erik was like, I thought I was potentially going home. Landon was extremely sketching me out, but like, I didn't know what the vote was. So now I need to figure out what I need to do to stay. And then we hear from Jordyn from the new Maziwa tribe that there's a lot of paranoia because like you just don't know. Like you have this girl thing that could happen. You could have just straight tribal lines. Who could be flipping? Like Sean could be someone that we could vote out, but I trust Sean. Like there's a lot of things that could happen, and ultimately it all comes to not because like it just stays tribal lines, but we don't know that yet. But we go into the challenge, and it's a very risky one. We've done where instead of having the full tribe compete, only 2 people from each tribe hold immunity in the balance for their tribe mates. And it's leading the blind. So one person's a caller, one person's creating a puzzle blindly. And it's just an 8-piece puzzle. Can't be that difficult. It really can't be that difficult, Oh, man. But, a great editing happened in this challenge by McKenna. Hats off to her for that. Because, like, we see the ending times. We know that Damu wins, and Damu wins by like half of Maziwa's times. Maziwa takes 7 minutes between Maddie as the caller, Robbie as the puzzle maker, and Danny as the puzzle maker, and Erik as the caller for Damu. But it was a very interesting challenge. John, do you want to sort of go into it?
Yeah. This was the brainchild of McKenna and Carrie. And it's just something where 2 people, simple puzzle, and it's blindfolding. And it's really working on that communication, which is something that is so pivotal in Survivor in challenges. And what's really interesting here is I was with the Maziwa tribe. So I was with Maddie and Robbie recording that. And what we don't see in the episode is Robbie accidentally minimized his screen while blindfolded. So there's this long period where Maddie's trying to figure out what's going on because she doesn't see a minimized screen. She sees the window being shared.
Oh no.
And she's trying to navigate Robbie, but Robbie can't do anything because his window's minimized. So he can't interact with the puzzle at all.
I actually forgot that you guys mentioned that to me after the fact because I wasn't there. And that sort of like just by itself, you can understand why they lose. Because like overall, like when you see the actual episode and you're seeing them actually do the puzzle pieces, I think both teams did a very good job of communicating. Like I don't think there was a bad caller. And the person who's running the puzzle can only do so much. So there's really nothing you can really blame them unless they were like extremely not listening to their caller. But Danny and Erik were very level-headed the entire time. They don't minimize their screen and they just kill it. They rock that challenge. New Damu wins immunity. New Maziwa is heading to tribal council now. And we hear from the Damu tribe, and Erik's like, I was going to volunteer anyway, but I was sort of like chosen as well. And Kylie sort of like has a role in there. She's like, Erik's already like on the bottom, but like he's also a very good communicator. So it just makes sense to put Erik there. But like if we lose, like we have someone an easy out and all that. So we're seeing the dynamic sort of like more firm up currently within Damu, where Kylie, John, and Danny are very much the crux now. And like Michael likes them, but doesn't like Danny. Erik likes all of them, but would hope that like Michael would go instead of him in that scenario. So you have three people who won their battle to avoid rocks in a very good position. But let's see what happens now with Maziwa. And we see immediately Robbie talks to Alanis and Maddie, and they're all in agreement. We just need a name. Let's have a name. Let's have a backup name in case we find out our first target has an advantage. We think Sean has it, but we don't really know what Sean's doing. Sean's just this wild card. And John knows Sean pretty well, so I think he could agree there.
Yeah, Sean has seen one season of Survivor, so he is completely unexperienced when it comes to Survivor, and we see that influencing this vote. The fact that he's so charming and has people thinking of how smart he is, the fact that he would pick up on how to pick up idols and everything is a real boon for his game. It really speaks to how highly he's presenting himself in the game. But unfortunately, the rest of the tribe is completely overthinking this, which ultimately leads to their downfall.
Yeah, so they ultimately decide name's going to be Victoria. She seems very smart. And like, they just don't know. They just need to get rid of someone that they think would be a threat to them at this point, where they feel is like, we could probably get Sean out whenever. And then they're like, Jordyn can be the backup name in case something were to happen. And they say, Robbie says, one of us can say plan B if we need to change the name at tribal. Just say plan B, find a way to put it in there, which is funny because he does say plan B. I get that he says like, I only have a plan A. I don't have a plan B to try to firm up with them. We're only doing plan A. But that's putting trust in your people that like they understand that you're not, because you said, I say plan B, we change. He technically says plan B there. But, Maddie and Alonso aren't idiots. So we didn't have to worry about them not understanding his very active clue there. But at the same time, we have Victoria, Jordyn, mainly just those two because Sean gets pulled for a confessional and then is in his own room and own world of trying to understand what's going on. But the girls are, Victoria and Jordyn are very much like, we should try to pull in Maddie and Alanis. Let's get a 4-girl majority. And like, if we pitch it to them strong enough, they would see that even if they lose Robbie here, if we lose, we're willing to let Sean go. And then it's 4 girls going into the merge potentially because they're of the mind that like it could be happening next round. So, and if it doesn't, then we have someone else we can get rid of and we can have 4 women get into the merge together. And there's always something that you have to think about. Like Kyle, you had a castmate on your season who very much when she went out was trying to pitch a girls' alliance that would have actually sent you home. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, the women's almost being a victim of the women's alliance is, it's a tough thing because in a way it does make sense when you're on a tribe and you have the numbers of a certain group. It can make sense to do that, but the problem I think that you run into is that you can kind of limit who you want to work with. you know, where you become set in that alliance, then you don't have much play there, because you hear them say, we want to keep tribe numbers and we want to keep all the women, which leaves one option. It's kind of tough in Survivor to only have one option, because if it doesn't go that way, then you're left with very little play.
Yeah. And then we see both groups work on each other. And then like we see Robbie, Alanis, and Maddie come back and they're like, they just try to pitch 2 different things. They're doing what we're doing. What? How dare they do what we're trying to do? When in reality, it's literally just because Sean has not talked with Victoria and Jordyn. So like, I just love that it's like Jordyn, Victoria, and Sean are having a fun time. They're just trying to figure out how it works, but they're having fun while doing it. And we have the other side. They're all very analytical right now, and they're like, they're playing us. They're these massive gamers right now, and I'm just saying back there. No, I don't. I just think they haven't talked. That's literally just all what it came down to.
Yeah, I think overestimation really played it, and it really goes to show how overestimating your opponents is just as dangerous in Survivor as underestimating your opponents. Because if you overestimate them and you think if you're thinking, okay, this is how we're approaching a situation, and you see them doing a similar approach to a situation, and you think, oh, well, they're just like next leveling us. And if you keep going too far, eventually you're getting to a point where you're just thinking they're way smarter than they actually are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The overestimation, it's equal to underestimation. Who would have thought 3 people in here that are all gamers would think the same way about that? Not me. But we go into tribal now, and we do go into tribal with Maddie, a confessional, saying like, I won't be surprised if this goes to rocks, but we'll see what happens. Because like their hope is that Sean, Jordyn, and Victoria split their own votes, thinking that they're doing this some big brain theory, which, you know, I love my big brain theories, but they never happen in these games. So we go into tribal, and it's haunting words from Maddie because we know what the outcome is. We do get some levity here though, with Lauren messing up which tribe's actually at tribal, which, to be fair, it shows that just as much as the players are running around rampant, so is production. And when you have an even number, it's very easy to suddenly confuse, oh, is it Damu or Maziwa? Oh, it's Maziwa. Okay. We won't bring Damu in for a second tribal. It's this tribe. We go in, and we basically hear from everyone, like, we have plans. We hope that our plan works, because obviously, end of the day, we would all want to avoid rocks. But as Robbie's confessional was, he's like, I think it's going to rocks. I hope it goes to rocks. I hope all of my people are safe and we can move forward. He almost gets everything, but he gets the monkey's paw. He gets half of what he wanted, but not the full thing. So 3 votes on Robbie, 3 votes on Victoria. It comes to a wheel, and Maddie's name pops up on that wheel. Maddie's our 4th person out of this game, not voted out. She never got a vote cast against her, so she's part of an elite company of rocked out people and people who have received no votes cast against. What a way to go. John, what do you think about your sister?
I mean, clearly I didn't do enough to prepare her for this game to say, hey, never go to rocks. Whatever you do, always avoid rocks. But in the end, she stuck to her guns. And I don't blame her in this point, because she heard her name as well.
Yep.
So because her name is the other name, it's very dangerous for her to flip her vote onto Robbie in case the votes go on her. And it is a 3-2-1 with her receiving 3 votes. So I understand that. But I also know something that also is very telling for this round that I've heard from contestants after it happened. I've heard from both Maddie and Sean. Neither of them understood how rocks work properly. Both of them didn't realize that the vote getter would be immune from the wheel.
Yep.
So I wanted to talk about that, not to interrupt you, but I did want to talk about that for sure, because we know Robbie, we know he's analyzed this game. He did the recaps for the first 2 seasons, and he definitely talked about how to game the rock twist, which is something that I was surprised he didn't try to do here, because you ideally would want to save the person that you're voting for, right? Like if you want Victoria to go, you want to vote for somebody else so Victoria is able to go on the wheel, which was something that nobody did throughout either of these 2 rounds that I'm aware of. So that honestly surprised me.
Well, he sort of half did it where he picked the person that he didn't think had an idol because he wanted Sean on the wheel. So like he sort of half did it, but didn't do it completely. So like I think in hindsight, they would have put 3 votes on Jordyn so that Sean and Victoria would be on the wheel if it got to that point. But I agree with you there. The other aspect of this that we should talk about is that we have 2 connections with a common theme, and that's John. And neither Sean or Maddie at any point during these 2 rounds got to each other to be like, hey, we have a commonality. Let's do something together.
So neither of these 2 knew the other was playing because we have integrity in our games and we don't let people know the cast until the day of. And neither of them actually knew of the other's existence either. If they were very careful of it, they could see it through social media and see that they have like this common person in between them. But yeah, through these entire 2 rounds, the only 2 people on this entire tribe who do not speak to each other are Maddie and Sean. And I'm sitting there in production watching this happen. It's like, oh my God, they could literally just be like, hey, I know John. Or, hey, do you know John? And it could be enough to give them the trust in each other to move forward together. Yeah. So it's a bit frustrating on my part, but at the same time, I don't blame them. It's busy. You're trying to talk to so many different people during these scramble rooms. When you win, you're in a single scramble room with the whole tribe. So you can't really like make that connection. And I also know Maddie and Sean both approach the game with, I don't want the rest of these people playing, knowing that I know someone on production. They thought it was something that could be very detrimental to them. Little did they know that there were quite a few people on this season who already had relationships with people on production, and it wasn't as big of a target as they thought it would be.
Absolutely. And I will say before we jump off of episode 4 and we go into our MVPs, which is happening, something I forgot to mention that was from episode 3 as well. If we're going to keep the commonality of John going and Maddie, I love the Robbie confessional where he's talking about how much he enjoys Maddie, but he's like, there's something about her. There's something about her mannerisms, something that like, I know you. I know you remind me of someone. I know you. And I'm going to hate when I find out afterwards who it is and be like, oh, I actually know this person. John, who are those mannerisms reminding him of?
As much as Maddie might want to deny that we have similar mannerisms, we certainly do. And I'm not surprised Robbie was able to pick up on them.
I just think it's so funny that he does pick on them, but doesn't get to that full. He goes 99 yards, drops the ball right before he gets to the end zone. Just like, I don't know what it is. I don't know, but I know, but I don't know, but I know. But yeah, Maddie, we loved having her on the season. We were begging her to come play one of our games for like the past year. So they finally get her on. Hey, what better fashion to go out in a classic DCP wheel out?
She was my winner pick. You know, definitely ashamed to see her go. I thought she was playing pretty well in a good spot.
She's definitely someone that I think would be very fun to have back on a future season. If we do, in that, the fabled all-star season or all returnee season, second chances, wheel out versus 0 votes. Who knows? There's so many avenues we could go here. But with that, it is time to get closer to the end of our podcast. And that's with our MVPs of episodes 3 and 4, week 2 of Sahara Dunes. Each of us will be providing an MVP, and it'll all accumulate to the end of the season where we have an ultimate MVP of Sahara Dunes. But I'm going to start with Prod. John, who was your MVP of this week?
Well, I think Robbie did navigate this week very well. He did a good job of establishing his relationship with Maddie and Alanis really strongly to the point where it could go to Rocks. I could never award an MVP to someone who goes to Rocks, which means I am giving it to the person who had the balls to make sure they didn't go to rocks. I am giving MVP to Michael this week for getting in there with the former Miziwas on the new Damu tribe and making sure he was safe and not going home no matter what happened.
Okay, that's a solid pick. Solid pick. Kyle, you've had some time to think about it. Who's your MVP of this week?
Well, I was between Michael as well. I was between Michael and Kylie. So since John took Michael, I'll go ahead and take Kylie. I thought that both of them played that situation pretty well, where Kylie comes in, she says, I'm the only girl. I'm worried I'll be targeted, and Michael smartly says, I'm the only gay. I was like, I thought that was well played on both their parts, because it gives them some sort of commonality, where it's like, if you're the only X person from this demographic, hey, let's work together. I thought that was really smart on both of their parts. So I'll give it to Kylie, because I think she's probably in a little bit of a better spot over there. And she has everybody pretty much wanting to work with her.
Absolutely. And I'm also riding the new Damu here. And yeah, I'm not making that same mistake Lauren did. I can't do that on this podcast. But I have been struggling. I don't mind having a repeat name pop up in the week, but like I was actually also between Michael, Kylie, and Danny. But for the fact that Danny does have someone on his tribe looking at him as a target, I'm going to double down with Kyle and pick Kylie. I think she's, after her first like internet snafu, I think she's been able to roll very well. She seems very sociable, very likable. I think she was a bigger reason for why Michael flips rather than Danny. Mm-hmm. John's also part of there. I don't want to discredit John for what he's doing, but I see what he's doing. And in my mind, I would be like, he's someone who will eventually just be too loud, too out there to rein in. He like sort of not in the same light, but it's similar to a Greg Davidson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wanted to mention just real quick, John, one of the best characters of all the seasons so far. Absolute fire entertainment all the way through. Probably going to blow himself up, but last.
As soon as we in production got his application, we knew he had to be on this season. He is just such a fun character and such a fun guy to be around. He has this presence that just makes you want to be around him, and we knew he would deliver on this season.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the Wile E. Coyote. Eventually, the Acme anvil is going to drop on his head. The dynamite's going to blow up in his hands. Something's going to happen. But hey, he's on the train right now, as he said. You're either on the train or you get ran over. He's currently on it, but he's like right in the front of the train, trying to be like, I'm king of the world, Titanic moment, and going to fall off at some point, I feel. But I'm going to give it to Kylie, which after 2 weeks now, Kylie is in first place with 2 MVPs, and then a 4-way tie with 1 MVP apiece for Michael, Erik, Robbie, and Maddie. I think this will be a very interesting MVP season as we get through. But that wraps up episode 3 and episode 4 coverage. And I'm very thankful to have you two here podcasting with me today. John, they know where to find you. You're part of DCP. Kyle, where can people find you if you want them to follow you on social media or anything, what you're up to?
My social media is usually my name, Kyle_Durrett. I'm on, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Anybody wants to show up, I'm there.
Yep. And if you want to have further conversations with Kyle or John or myself, you can join our Facebook page, Dynamic Character Productions. We put posts up there for when new episodes drop. We put polls up for who you think is going to win the season, who your favorite player is. And we also put up interview question polls for when we are interviewing the voted out contestants. So that's where you should be going. And also follow our TikTok. Follow all of our social media for secret scenes, and you will get those at the end of this video when we pop up all of our social media handles. Most of them are DCP_ORG. But with that wraps up this week's coverage. We'll be back next week. But remember to follow us here by clicking that subscribe button, click the like button, and click that bell for all notifications so you know where to find us, and that when new episodes drop, you'll be the first to know. But with that, I'm Alex Trias, my guests, John and Kyle, and we'll see you next time.